Joining us now on the news is Dr. Olagbenro Michael, who will enlighten us more on the World Tobacco Day. You're welcome. Thanks for joining us on the news.
Thank you, Lillian.
Okay, now, first of all, as the world marks World Tobacco Day, what comes to mind?
Profound sadness and some measure of fear. In fact, if you don't mind, I would like to ask that we observe a minute of silence for the 6,200 Nigerians who have died so far this year from tobacco-related diseases. May the soul of the faithful departed rest in peace.
Amen.
Tobacco is possibly the most catastrophic product that humanity has ever made. Possibly ranks next in line to weapons of mass destruction and small arms in the disaster and unquantifiable human suffering that it costs. And what scares me about that is not just that it has caused that, it is that it will continue to do that into the foreseeable future. Part of the depressing statistics is that more than 17 billion cigarette sticks are sold in Nigeria annually. And the combined turnover of the big players in the tobacco industry approximates close to 90% of the Nigerian GDP. And it will take a rather massive economy with rather sophisticated legal means to be able to put these guys in check, which we don't. And to make matters even more interesting, Nigeria imports more tobacco products than it sells. So even economically, it's giving us a negative balance of trade. So what comes to my mind with tobacco, it's absolute disaster. But as in any crisis, it is both a danger and an opportunity. And while as a nation, at least beginning from 2014 with the assent to the Nigerian Tobacco Act, which then became operational, there is some good news that we are taking use of the opportunity. But have we done this as we should? The answer is no.
Okay.
There is still a whole long way to go, and possibly media houses like yours could play a leading role. And maybe our billionaires like Femi Otedola, whose daughter gets exposed to tobacco smoke. She's a DJ. She gets exposed to tobacco smoke. Maybe he'll be kind enough to, push some money into tobacco issues in Nigeria.
Okay, now, how bad has this tobacco issue, this cankerworm, how bad has it eaten into humanity, into the life of Nigerians?
Humanity, of course, it is a disaster. There is nothing wrong or rather nothing good about tobacco. Tobacco products are possibly the only product that kills half of its customers. I mean, that goes to say a long way. As a primary school student, I performed a simple experiment when I was trying to show my dad's driver that tobacco was harmful. And what did I do? I got a few leaves of tobacco, soaked them in one of those small time containers full of water, and then apologies to animal rights activists, I dropped a lizard or two in them, and within minutes they were dead. And that told me as a child there was something wrong with tobacco. Now, the danger with tobacco is multiple-fold, and the danger is cumulative, and the danger is to both persons who use tobacco, particularly cigarette, and to persons who are passively exposed to the combustion product or cigarette smoke, as we call it. What are these dangers? First on the list is that tobacco smoke is known, proven, to be responsible for a number of cancers in the human body. There is a gene in the human body called the P53 gene.
Okay.
This gene acts like a gate master and a choir master, a gatekeeper rather, and a choir master, and it tells the cells of the body when to divide or when not to divide. Now, tobacco smoke products cause a characteristic, like a signature change in the DNA sequence of this P53 gene that makes it unable to function. So imagine when you have a choir playing without a choir master, or you have a 6-lane express road with no traffic control. What you have is chaos. That is similar to the cancers that happen.
Okay.
Now, what cancers do happen? You have cancers from the mouth, the throat, the tongue,
Lungs.
the airway, down to the lungs. You have cancers of the pancreas, cancers of the bladder,
All caused by tobacco.
all caused by tobacco smoke products. Tobacco smoke contains more than 250 harmful products.
Okay.
Now, aside from cancers, in the human lung, tobacco causes what we call emphysema, where the smallest units, the alveoli of the lungs, the walls begin to break down. And then when you inhale, you don't have spaces where that can mix with blood. So your body gets less blood, less oxygenation for every breath that you take. Now, to make matters worse, cardiovascular diseases globally contribute about 17.8 or thereabout million deaths per annum. Between 10 to 17% of these deaths are potentiated by the effects of tobacco. How does this happen? In fact, the reason for that is why the World Health Federation and the World Health Organization are collaborating this year to call this year it's not a World Tobacco Day, it's a World No Tobacco Day.
No Tobacco
because tobacco breaks hearts. Several things happen to the lining of the blood vessels of the body, and the heart itself is a modified blood vessel.
Okay.
So changes in the lining of the blood vessel, changes in the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood because the lung no longer gives it appropriate oxygenation, and changes with the way the clotting of the blood happens means that, one, the heart is made to do more work. So it has a higher demand for oxygen, which is not as present in the bloodstream as it should be. The blood vessels that supply blood to the heart themselves become compromised. And what this cumulative effect has is that the wall of the heart itself could lose its physical integrity.
Okay.
It will literally break.
Okay.
So you see, a coffin is the best tobacco that money can buy.
Now, you spoke about passive and active smokers. Now,
Yes.
Can you tell us the difference?
Okay. A few days ago, I went to a joint near my house to view the Champions League semi-finals. Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, my favorite team. About 3 chairs away, it was an open-air venue. A young man in his 30s was having a smoke. And about 10 meters plus down, I had the undue privilege of inhaling the smoke that was coming from the other end of his cigarette stick and the smoke that came from his mouth when he exhaled. I wasn't within a few meters, I was like 10 meters away. But you see, the little draft of wind carried that to me. For those 5 minutes before I changed my position, then before I actually had to leave the venue, I was a passive smoker.
Okay.
Persons around him who did not by themselves inhale tobacco smoke, light up a cigarette and take a smoke, were passive smokers. He that inhaled that directly was the active smoker. Now the issue is this. If you look at if I were to deconstruct a cigarette, I'm sorry I didn't come on air with one, the end at which the smoker inhales has a filter. So some of the larger sized particles from the tobacco smoke are filtered before he inhales them. Now that means 2 things. That means, one, the smoker tends to inhale more deeply than he will have done. So it's like you're ensuring that those chemicals get to the innermost reaches of your lungs. However, the persons across his table or across at the bar do not have that privilege. So both the smaller and larger sized particles are taken in by them.
Okay.
So passive smoking will also expose persons to
To-
the risk that the person who is not smoking.
So it affects both ways.
It affects
Now
both
let's talk
ways.
about tobacco legislation. Now the Senate have come up with trying to ban it once in a while, but it looks like there's always no follow-up. So what's the journey so far?
Okay, after a lot of work by different advocacy groups comprising of eminent personalities in the medical profession and several civil society organizations, in the year 2015, the Nigerian Tobacco Control Bill was fully passed and signed into law and became the Nigerian Tobacco Control Act of 2015. It's a small 34-page document. And what we've been able to do with that as regards tobacco control so far, there was a lot of emphasis on curbing advertising.
Okay.
TV advertising accounted for 40% of uptake by persons who were influenced by advertising. However, studies conducted in southeastern and the middle belt part of Nigeria, some in the north and a few in the southwestern part, also point out that peer pressure was the most significant factor. So that was something the tobacco bill, in its trying to ban advertisement, could not take care of. But the good side is that you no longer see tobacco adverts splashed across billboards or being associated with events like we would have had. I do hope the same will happen to alcoholic drinks. The Golden Ultimate Searches and Co. need to come to an end, then maybe that will be good. Now, aside from that, the bill placed particular emphasis on the quality of product being produced, such that as far as possible, some of those harmful combustion products might be eliminated as far as possible. But again, I do not have any data that tells me that has been effective, though the period has been a bit short to be able to say it's less than 5 years.
Okay.
So data for that has not been too good. Then the ban on advertisements in public spaces and consumption in public spaces need to go a step further. The problem is not that the bill isn't as comprehensive as someone like me will love it to be. The problem is that it has not, what's the word now? It has not been able to buy in a whole lot more stakeholders than it should buy in. And it has not been able to bring tobacco control issues into the forefront of public discourse. There is no targeted media advocacy, publicity, education activities that is measured with target audience research and all of that concerning tobacco control.
Okay, now, still concerning tobacco control, do you think it's actually possible to control and curtail the sale of tobacco, considering the amount of revenue that is being made, the number of people that consume it, the amount of revenue that is coming in now? Do you think it's possible for the authorities to really, or do you think they really want to be serious in curbing it down?
If you make me the commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria today, and you give me 5 years to stop tobacco, I will. If you make me the Honorable Minister of Health, I will. Now, Nigerians, as of 2012, spent about 90 billion on tobacco expenses.
And that is a revenue that is still going back to the government at the end of the day. So do you think they will actually want to cut that?
The WHO recommends that we place 70% minimum excise tax on tobaccos. Nigeria charges 17%. So we're not even taxing them enough. Now, even if we were to tax 70%, even if we were to tax 100%, tax 200% and get about 200 billion naira, how does that translate into, one, the cost of care for persons that come down with cancers, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, that come down with infertility, subfertility, that come down with long-term complications? How does that even begin to pay for the quality of life lost? So the cost-benefit review of it is a no-no for tobacco. Okay. Tobacco does not give any benefit whatsoever to the healthcare system. It does not give any benefit whatsoever to the persons that are taken out to the economy. It damages the economy, it damages our spirits, it damages our health. And if you look at it, persons who are poor are much more likely to take up smoking. Yes. So smoking prevention, therefore, takes on every human being should be equal before the law, and by virtue of his own opportunity in the economy, should not be limited by age, gender, ethnicity, or economic status. So if tobacco is more likely to go that way. It becomes a matter of human rights and equality before the law to even stop tobacco smoking. It becomes a requirement of fulfilling Nigerian constitutional directives to stop tobacco consumption. So we have to go both ways. We have to shut down supply. That will be a bit difficult, even if the custom does its best. There will be those who are addicted to tobacco and tobacco products and who will continue for a while. Then we also have to shut down the demand side. Do you realize that Nigerian children from the age of 10 years are taking up tobacco smoke? And that may end up being a lifetime habit. So if we want to shut down that, the demand side of the equation, which we know that 34% of those that uptake tobacco at that age just on account of peer pressure.
Okay.
It means you have to do massive education, include the issues around tobacco control and tobacco-related issues into the curriculum of our primary school health syllabi, include it to our secondary school health syllabi. Let us begin to give awards of ₦1 million plus to secondary school students who come up with innovative ways to stop their colleagues from taking up tobacco smoking, and not offering 45 million naira or something to somebody.
we'll just stop it. And now finally, addiction. You spoke about addiction. Now, what's your best recommendation for tobacco addicts?
Well, the first thing I would say is that don't look down on yourself if you happen to be stuck with tobacco. I've had friends who have had problems getting off tobacco. And getting off tobacco, if you're addicted, will not be an overnight thing. It will be a process. So, number one, get medical help. Yes, we don't have enough number of psychiatrists and mental health experts in Nigeria, but we do have enough to provide some measure of succor. Join a support group or form one around yourself.
Do we have support groups in Nigeria?
We have a few.
Active support groups
Yes,
that
we do.
is affordable?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We even have some that are free.
Okay.
But the issue is that how much technical support do these groups get? How many of them do we have? And then let the person find someone or some people to whom he or she, a large number of our women are taking up smoking, even as children, whom he or she can be responsible to.
Okay.
You will have those cravings. That's natural. You won't get over them immediately. But then we can work out together with your health care provider and your mental health expert a program for de-escalating your use of tobacco and over time being able to get over it.
Okay, thank you very much for coming on the news. I
Thank
must
you.
say we're really educated.
Thank you.